Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove and I'm joined by Alex Smith for this week's version of The View from the Opposition. Newcastle travelled down to Bournemouth on Sunday for the second game in this new Premier League campaign. Alex, welcome to the podcast. How are you keeping?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, thank you for sparing the time. I think the neutrals might be looking forward to this one. Newcastle fans, I'm not too sure because Eddie Howe's record against Bournemouth isn't great, and the trip to the Vitality last November will probably still be something that's keeping Newcastle fans awake. Hopefully this time around it'll be a different result from a Newcastle point of view. But from Bournemouth's point of view, Alex, what are you expecting this Sunday?
I think it'll be a really interesting game. Certainly the performance against Forest was sort of getting there, I think, from a Cherries point of view, but certainly they lacked, or I felt they lacked the sort of the target man, the number 9 after Solanke left. But should be seeing new signing Evanilson this weekend, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what he brings to the team, and whether that can be sort of that missing link that was, I think, possibly slightly missing last weekend against Forest. Certainly, Bournemouth created some good chances, but did seem to be missing that link up and that finisher at the top of the pitch. And it'll be a really good game, I think, particularly Newcastle possibly not winning as convincingly as you might expect against newly promoted Southampton last weekend. So I guess you'll have a point to prove as well. But I think it'll be a good game.
Yeah, I think many players who played for Newcastle that opening day of the season will want to kind of show what they can do when Newcastle got their full team out. Obviously, they had to go nearly an hour with 10 men and thankfully got all 3 points. You mentioned there the Forest game with Bournemouth. It ended 1-1. Bournemouth needed a late equaliser to get the points. But from what I've read and from what I've seen, they were on top in that game, really. And they can feel a little hard done by only to get a point.
Yeah, I think the first half, certainly they weren't as much as at the races as Forest were. I think in the first half, Forest arguably deserved to have that lead. The Cherries' main chance in the first half was the disallowed goal that was ruled off by VAR for offside from actually a really neat corner routine. But then the second half was better. Did see Christie and Kluivert come on, and they seem to help with a bit of energy and attack, and new signing Julian Araujo as well at right back. He added some energy on the right flank, and I think certainly towards the end of the game they did seem to get on top and deserve their equaliser. I felt, and speaking to Andoni Iraola, he felt the same and did actually feel that they could have gone on and won it afterwards. So it was, I think probably 1-1 was about fair, but I think Cherries certainly in the second half looked towards being the better team of the two sides.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned there the new signing that's coming, £40 million plus, Brazilian international, Evanilson from Porto, isn't it? Now he's got big shoes to fill. Dominic Solanke obviously off to Tottenham. I think many Newcastle United fans would have had him at Newcastle United. Eddie Howe certainly would have done. One of the very rare players he's got on record to actually praise, as in a possible transfer target. Doesn't usually happen under Eddie Howe. I mean, from what you've seen, from what you've heard about this chap, is he going to be able to replace Dominic Solanke? Because from what I remember watching of Solanke against Newcastle, he's always been a nuisance.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be honest, I haven't seen him play live in the flesh, but I have watched a few compilations and some highlights videos on YouTube. Certainly last season he was pretty prolific for Porto. 25 goals in all competitions, including a Champions League hat trick, which is a good thing to have coming into the Premier League. But I think the point that, again, Iraola's been making is that Dominic Solanke offered so much to Bournemouth beyond the goals, and it was his link-up play, his work connecting attack and the midfield that really made him such an asset and such a strong one of Bournemouth's key players. Obviously, the 19 league goals helps, but I think Evanilson will have to. I think the key thing is that he comes in and fills that role, being that point of that target up front and linking attack. And even if he doesn't score as many goals as Solanke this season, but does help to link up the play and provide for other players, he will arguably be as much of a success as a new signing could be. And I think it'll be really. I probably assume he will go in from the beginning this weekend with a full week of training. So it will be interesting to see who drops out for him, but also how he links up with the other players in the team. And I think it'd be a really exciting signing and a bit of a statement signing as well for Cherries so quickly after losing Solanke.
Is a bit more of a pressure on him though, because obviously you've got the price tag, so the fans will hopefully see him return that fee, but also the fact that he is replacing such a talented player in Solanke.
I think there will be, but probably there is that pressure that comes with you wherever you go to when you join a new club, and you're expected to be a starting player. So I think nowadays it's sort of part and parcel of the game. If you make a move to a club, sort of at whatever level, and you are bought in to be a starting player, there is a certain level of pressure. But absolutely, him coming in as Dominic Solanke's replacement will be that extra level of pressure. And I mean, as I say, he's played in the Champions League. He's played at the highest European level. Played with Porto, who are a big European club. So I think probably that shows that he can deal with the pressure or has the tools to do so. So I think he will. It will just be a case of how quickly he can hit the ground running. Whether it will be this weekend, it'd be great to see him get a debut goal or two. But we'll see. But I think it's a good signing, and all of the sort of noises around the club is that they're really pleased with him, and Iraola, even though he sort of says to us he doesn't take too active a role in the transfers, he sounds really pleased with him and thinks that he'll be a great addition to his squad.
Well, I wish him all the best, but starting after Sunday if possible. On our match preview with my colleague John Gibson, he said that if Newcastle United are ambitious, then they go to Bournemouth and win this game. Is that a little bit unfair on Bournemouth, considering what they achieved last season? They finished really strongly. They really impressed. Do we underestimate Bournemouth at our peril?
I think you do. I sort of get the point that if Newcastle want to be sort of qualifying for the Champions League, then these are the sort of games that you need to be getting 3 points in. But I think the thing with Bournemouth this season is it's a settled squad under Iraola. He's been in for a full season. They know how he works. They know what the squad knows, what he demands from them, what he wants from them, and it is, whereas last season it was sort of a bit of a slow start as he implemented his ideas. And I think certainly when Newcastle visited last year, they were sort of towards the bottom end of the table, and I think the 2-0 win put them clear of the relegation, 3 points clear of the relegation zone, I think. So it's a different prospect, I think, from Cherries this year. With that settled side, with Iraola settled in nicely, and a really strong squad, and some really good additions. I think this summer, certainly 2 or 3 players that have come in that are excellent. Alongside Evanilson, obviously, who I haven't seen play yet, but Dean Howson last weekend, 19 years old, looked like he'd been playing in the Premier League for a decade. He looked so confident, so comfortable on the ball, and he looked excellent. that's another question whether he will start this weekend. Iraola has a big selection headache in defence, but I think I think it is one of those where you will underestimate Cherries at your peril, and they are a really, really good side.
You mentioned that game back in November of 2023. Newcastle United had a host of injuries and suspensions, and then they picked up a couple of injuries on the day as well. And it it was a really bad afternoon at the Vitality. But they haven't got the best of records, I don't think, down there. And as I mentioned earlier, Eddie Howe hasn't beaten Bournemouth yet in the Premier League. He's hoping for his 5th time lucky this time around. What are you expecting from Newcastle when they turn up? Is it a game where the Cherries go into it as the underdogs?
I think so. I think probably slight underdogs. Obviously, there's been a lot made of Newcastle in the last couple of seasons, possibly breaking into that big six, as it were, with the money that's been invested and the noises around the club. Certainly is obviously from an outsider's perspective, it very much seems like they are pushing to become one of those top 4 clubs season in, season out. So I think that sort of narrative around the team suggests that Cherries are probably going to be looked at as the underdogs, but I do think it'll be a really, really tough test for Newcastle. I expect them to be to play some good football. I expect them to take the game to Cherries. Obviously, they've got a side with a lot of talent, a lot of pedigree. Good goal scorer in Isak up top. So I think it will be a really tough test for Cherries as well. But I'm expecting a bit of a tussle, I think. And I think it'll be a close game either way. If Cherries get everything right and Evanilson really hits the ground running, then it could be a really, really happy afternoon for Cherries on Sunday afternoon.
Well, one of the things Newcastle United, one of the people Newcastle United will be without is Fabian Schär. So it's likely to be Emil Kraft, who's traditionally right back, coming in as the centre back. And when he's filled in there, he's looked decent enough. But that's going to be an interesting matchup against Evanilson, if that is the pairing on Sunday. But elsewhere, Newcastle United probably will have the same start 11 that started against Southampton, with Jacob Murphy coming. Well, hopefully getting more than 23 minutes this time around, not having to be subbed off to help with a suspension. But lots of very exciting players. From a Bournemouth point of view, who should we be watching out for? I know we've mentioned there the new striker up top, but aside from him, who is the key man that Newcastle United are going to have to stop?
I think. Well, I think Iraola's got a real selection headache across the park. So it'll be interesting to see who starts. But I think someone who went quite under the radar a bit this weekend, who I thought was excellent, was Alex Scott in midfield. He was, I think I saw he got the second most combined tackles and interceptions across the weekend. And sort of I think he plays that role really well, sort of disrupting the attack. And I think he'll be potentially quite an important player for Cherries through the season. In terms of elsewhere, I think Semenyo is certainly a threat. Obviously got his goal on Saturday just gone. But I think he scored against Newcastle last season as well. And I think he'll be a threat. I imagine with Evanilson probably coming in, he'll be deployed on the wing. Iraola does say he prefers to see him on the wing, but does play through the middle for Ghana, and played through the middle a bit on Saturday, in the absence of a number 9. So I think he'll be one to stop. And then I think others to look out for in defence, Ilya Zabani was really good. Just had a really solid game on Saturday. And his centre-back partner will be either Marcos Senesi, who should come in after illness last week, or Dean Howson. So it'll be interesting to see who Iraola goes with, but that's a really good selection headache for him to have, because Howson looked just so good at the weekend, and Senesi's proved what a great player he is last season. So that'll be a really interesting. Either player, I think, will certainly be a tough challenge for Newcastle.
Sounds like lots of positive vibes coming out from Bournemouth. It's always good when a manager has a selection headache based on players doing well. That's always what you want. In terms of their main strength that Newcastle United have to look out for, what's the one thing you'd be telling Eddie Howe that he has to stop from a team perspective?
I think they do. They attack with pace, and I think it's they've got a lot of pace in their attack with Semenyo, with Dango Ouattara on the other wing. I expect he'll likely start at the weekend, and then players coming off the bench. They certainly, Cherries like to play quite a high pressure game. And Iraola likes to make relatively early substitutions to keep the energy really high. So I think that's one thing that Eddie Howe needs to look out for is they will bring a lot of energy to the game, and he can't expect them to sort of sit back in a bit of a low block or invite pressure onto them. They will take the game to Newcastle, and I think that's something that Eddie Howe needs to be wary of, and I'm sure he probably is. But I think that'll be, again, something that will make it really interesting this weekend.
Yeah, certainly so, because I think what Eddie Howe was trying to rediscover at Newcastle is that high energy of his own side and their high press, and that was so prominent 2 seasons ago. It was lacking a little bit last season, and we didn't get to see it against Southampton because the red card kind of taught the game plan, as it were. So it'll be interesting to see if they can rediscover that energy that they did have when they qualified for the Champions League. But away from home last season, they were awful. They lost 11 out of 19 games, including down in Bournemouth. So I feel like this is quite an important game for Newcastle United in terms of, if you lose that first away game after such a horrendous run last season, does that set the tone for the rest of the season? You really want to win that first one to kind of rid any bad memories of last season. So it's going to be a little bit of pressure, I think, on Newcastle United. But in terms of the weakness of Bournemouth, what's the one thing that you think Newcastle can exploit above all else?
I think over, certainly watching last Saturday, I think Forest found some joy sort of in between the lines a little bit, and sort of were able to certainly in the first half run at Cherries quite well, break a bit of that press, and created some good chances through that sort of ultimately led to their goal as well. So I think Cherries will have to look out for that. I think potentially that will be something that Newcastle might look to exploit. But I think I'll be honest. I look at Cherries' team and they are. It looks pretty solid from sort of 1 to 11. But there will be, I think Newcastle will have chances, and maybe Cherries fans might point to the goalkeeper as a bit of a weak link. Neto made some great saves last weekend, but arguably should have really done better with the Forest goal. And sort of, I think it'll be interesting to see who gets picked in goal. I sort of imagine it will be Neto again, but there've been rumours circulating that Cherries might go in for a keeper this window. They signed the New Zealand keeper Paulson, but he went straight back on loan to Wellington in New Zealand. So he won't feature, but it'll be interesting. There's Neto, Mark Travers, and Dennis, the 3 keepers there at the moment, and I see quite a number of predicted lineups, and all of them seem to have different keepers in. So it'll be interesting to see who gets picked there, but that might be a slight weak link that Newcastle might look to exploit.
Well, I did read a comment from a Bournemouth fan on the BBC website, which had to go with Neto, and they actually said to bring in Travers. And I guess while we were complimenting or kind of celebrating from a Bournemouth point of view the headache that the manager's got in terms of the outfield players, the one decision that you never want to be forced to make when it comes to form is the goalkeeper. So if they stick with Neto, maybe he'll be thinking, oh, I can't afford another mistake here. That's, his nerves might come through. And if you pick another goalkeeper to replace him, he's thinking, this is my chance, but the other guy was out because of a mistake, so I can't do that. So, whatever the decision probably works in Newcastle's favour in many ways, because you're just going to have a nervous goalkeeper, I think, whoever he decides to pick. Really interesting, that one, yeah. From a Newcastle United point of view, is there a certain player that you think Bournemouth will be fearing above anyone else?
I think Isak will be, certainly with his goal scoring records, will be one that you sort of pinpoint as someone who you need to keep quiet. And obviously he got an assist. He got the assist on Saturday, I believe, but obviously didn't score. And he'll be looking to open his account for the season. So I think he'll be one name that will be definitely probably, I would say probably the main name that will be circled on that Newcastle team sheet to sort of keep an eye out for, and he'll be hungry to get his Premier League account open. I think this weekend.
Well, I've got him as my captain in my fantasy football team, so he could score a hat-trick. That would be absolutely brilliant. But he did get the assist, as you said there, and he got it from a goalkeeper who made a mistake. Alex McCarthy just passed the ball straight to him. So if that can be replicated this Sunday, I'm sure Newcastle United fans would take it if Neto is indeed watching or
Hopefully
listening. Yeah, from your point of view. Alex, all that remains to be done is to get your score prediction. How do you see this one going?
I'm going to go with a 2-1 home win. Why not get Cherries with the win? I'll predict Evanilson will get on the score sheet in his home debut, and I'll say Isak will score for Newcastle, but we'll go with 2-1.
2-1. Well, actually, I said that the last thing to do is to get your prediction, but I realised I haven't asked you about Lloyd Kelly, because there's a chance he might start if Eddie Howe decides to do something wacky in the central defence. I mean, I can't really see him playing two left footers. I hear him and Dan Burn, but you never know. Probably will be Mealcraft, has to be Mealcraft. But he did come on towards the end of the game against Southampton. He does look a really good player. I don't think he's fully fit yet. But what have Newcastle United got in Lloyd Kelly? I mean, someone said to me from a Bournemouth fan channel in the summer that he could be in an England international the next couple of years. Is he that good?
I think certainly could be a big miss for Cherries. I say that, but they have brought in Dean Howson, who I think is an excellent replacement. And sort of Iraola did say throughout the summer that was the initial priority was to replace him. But I think he's a really, really good player. And I think once he gets to full fitness, he'll certainly be fighting for that starting berth for Newcastle. And as that Bournemouth fan says, I'm sure he has England ambitions in the next couple of seasons. And I think he's probably got the talent and the pedigree to do that. But we'll need to get into that starting slot for Newcastle first, I think, for that to happen. But I think he should be a real asset for Newcastle.
As a centre back or a left back, because there is some debate to where his best position is when he's fully fit. So, what's your take on it?
I think I would say that his stronger position is centre back, but I think he's probably one of those players who can operate at both positions and operate to a good level in both. So I think I personally would play him at centre back, but I guess that's a decision for Eddie Howe. But yeah, it's a useful player to have, those sort of players who can be deployed in two positions across the back line.
Yeah, that versatility is always key. I mean, him and Eddie Howe will get a lovely reception, you would suspect, on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, there's a lot of love for Eddie Howe in Bournemouth for what he did across his many seasons at the club. So I'm sure he'll get a warm reception as always at the club, and I think it'll be a really fascinating tussle between him and Iraola, and should be a really good game.
Hopefully so. Just remind us of your score prediction then.
2-1
to Bournemouth, I'm assuming.
The Cherries, yeah.
Just checking, you never know. I'm going to go for, I think it'll be a close game. And I did say my head yesterday says a draw. My heart says a win. But I am going to go for a 1-1 draw. Not the result I think Newcastle United fans will be hoping for. Like I say, getting a win on the road straight away will be really important. But better to get the point than to lose. I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a good game, but I'm going to go for a point. Hopefully I'm proved wrong and Newcastle can get all three. Alex, thank you very much for popping me on the podcast. A pleasure to chat to you. To you guys watching and listening, you know what to do. Hit thumbs up on YouTube, give us a rating and review on the podcast channel, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk when you can keep up to date with all the Newcastle United news, including a dedicated Transfer Live blog and a live blog covering this game on Sunday. For myself, I'll see you guys very soon.